Good evening. So we're going to go ahead and get started. As usual, our meeting starts, we usually say 6:30, but 6:30 just means that we get people in the room starting to come in at 7 o'clock. So maybe we might be on to something. We'll just move everything up a half an hour and then start 30 minutes late and we'll calibrate right. So first of all, let me officially convene the Penn Branch Citizen Civic Association January 9th meeting. Starting now. So we have a lot going on. I know there was rumors of snow, so I got a few calls from people. This is Washington, D.C., so you hear snow and you hear weather, and people don't come out, so it's hard to tell whether we're going to have a light turnout or whether the room's going to fill up within the next 15 to 20 minutes, which is usually what happens. A couple of things I do want to start saying, just open, so thank you very much for coming out. We have a good program. We have a great guest here. As you know, we have Ed Lazier from the DC Fiscal Policy Institute. And a big thing that we have going on in Ward 7 is really a focus on the budget season. It is the budget season. That's when all the things are being determined. But we also have a lot of issues that impact Ward 7 that we should be concerned about. And if anyone has worked with Ed Lazier or is familiar with the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, they have a great, not only do they understand the issues, but they understand the numbers that impact the issues. So needless to say, this meeting, as all thanks to Stan Benton, we will tape the meeting for people who aren't able to do it, attend. But we're also going to really keep up this theme and focus on the budget, focus on activities that impact Penn Branch and our neighborhood, immediate neighborhood. So we'll welcome Ed Lazier later on in the meeting. So we have some housekeeping things that we really want to also take care of. We still have people coming in with food, but I tell you a couple of things that I want to remind you, and we'll talk later on about it, is just to remind you that our membership drive and that we really do need the membership. I want to start and open and thank everybody who worked very hard on to make the Christmas event a success. Carolyn Ray, who's back in the room, worked very hard. And one thing that we didn't get a chance, we said it kind of toward the end, but Carolyn came to work at the guest table, and it was her birthday that day. So people like that, I just want to applaud Carolyn Ray for really coming out. And in addition to that, like I said, so we are in the process of making a couple of updates on the website, on the newsletter, and I'll follow up with some updates. But right now, I want to keep the flow of the meeting. I'm going to delay just a little bit to allow people to come in. But right now, one of the things we want to do is start, Matt's not here, is we'll officially, oh, Matt's in the back. Thanks, Matt. Matt, are you going to do a treasurer's report? Or? Sure. So we'll start with the treasurer's report from Matt Bernardi, our treasurer. Thanks.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So this is for the period of December after our meeting, so I believe that was the 18th through today. So we had a total withdrawals. We had $249 withdrawals for the holiday party. That was for poinsettias, the decorations, desserts, and the vegetarian meal as well, and also for music, I believe. We also had additional $719.40 for the meal proper, for the barbecue, and that was for, I believe, 60 people, 70 people that were there. And then I also paid out $69 for the October food, which I believe was lasagna. They got me that receipt a little late. For that month, we also had $501 in donations. Most of that was for the holiday party, so to counteract the expenses of the meal, and $380 in new membership. The outstanding balance is $1,409.42. The previous outstanding balance was $1,613.82. Can I have a movement to accept?
Moved.
Exit current balance.
Can you repeat those numbers, please? Yeah, 1,049.
$1,409.42 is our current balance.
1,409.
Yeah.
And what was the 16, 13?
That's the previous months.
Move to accept?
Yes, can I have a move to accept? Someone say.
Yeah, someone
Move
said
to
so.
accept.
So moved.
And next is Robert's Rules of Order 101. So next, I did get a chance to speak with Tawana Banks. Normally we have the minutes. Last month was our holiday party, so we dispensed with the meeting. So there's no minutes from the December meeting. And November, my understanding that Tawana was not here, but someone did take notes. So we're asking just concurrence to dispense with the reading of minutes, and in the next meeting that we will read the minutes from the November meeting, and the minutes at the time for our February would be from the January meeting. Is that okay? I don't think we need to vote on that. So with that, we're going to do the flying report from Lieutenant Jameson, and also encourage you, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So we, like I said, we have a couple of updates.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good evening.
Good evening.
The first start up with the homicide was on Ridge Road, that was on 605. You might have saw the news, the young lady got burnt up in the vehicle. That homicide was connected with the guy that was killed on 295 about 3 hours prior to that happening. And we believe that he was killed in that vehicle that was burnt up on Ridge Road. They both knew each other. We're trying to find out what was the connection between the two homicides, but we strongly feel that they are connected. Based on their off-the-job activities, which probably was criminal. The case is wide open. We're working with PG County Police on it because his body was dumped about 100 feet into PG County on 295 in the District 9. They do believe that, well, the police department believes that that vehicle was used to kidnap him and kill him inside the vehicle while she was in the trunk. I believe that she was just collateral damage, unfortunately. When they set the car on fire, she was not dead yet. We have a very strong witness that saw everything, and she pretty much, for lack of better expression, cooked in that vehicle. So we really try to get some leads and get this case closed. We do believe the same person killed both people. That was in 605 and rear 718 Ridge Road, right down the street from the rec center there. Familiar with that. It's not the Penn branch, but it is the 605, and it comes from our crime stats. So that's the only homicide that 605 had for the year. Was that one. Going with the crime stats. Crime was down in 605. Violent crime was down by 20%. Property crime was down by 35%. For a total overall crime decrease of 33% in 605. There were no burglaries in 605 the last 30 days. We had 2 ADWs, one in the 13th block of Anacostia Road and one in the 44th block of Sutton Avenue. We had 2 robberies, one in the 2300 block of Pennsylvania and the 2800 block of Minnesota. There was 6 stolen autos, 4200 block of Nash Place, 4100 block of Sutton Avenue, 2900 block of Nash Place, 3100 block of Mendel, 3100 block of G, and the 4000 block of G. We had 8 auto break-ins, 500 block of Hilltop Terrace, 3200 block of Penn, 1500 block of 42nd, 2 in the 4200 block of Mass, 4200 block of G Street, that was 1, 2300 block of Fairlawn, and the 1500 block of 41st Street. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns, crime-wise, MPD-wise? I could perhaps answer. Yes, sir.
Enforcement of the do not enter sign on Texas off from Pennsylvania. So in the morning, on my way to work, there's a boatload of vehicles that have entered onto Texas from Pennsylvania. So could you place a scout car at S in Texas?
What we do is, I don't place one in one particular location. We revolve around all of them. I can tell you last month we wrote 500 tickets for that violation and made 19 arrests. I have a traffic unit, 6D has a traffic unit, they do focus on the night signs during the AM and PM rush hour. If I tell you I'm gonna put them at, then nobody will come. Well, that's the goal, but also when you have the officer pull you over and put points on your license, then less likely to do that again. So we write hundreds of tickets for that violation every month.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Jimmy?
Yeah, so one resident just asked me to ask a question.
Sure.
I don't know if it's more DC police or if it's something having to do with DDOT. But we've had a few people that have concern about businesses in the area that have their cars parked, several cars parked along the street. Some of them are commercial vehicles. Two of them are funeral home owners that park their limousines and excessive cars, and so it's the concern that I get that's raised the most. I know next month we will have somebody from month after next, someone from DDOT coming. But I figured out, in terms of cross purposes, I wanted to ask you just from the Metropolitan Police Department, and then it's a question we'll probably raise again. But it's so frequent, and it's probably the biggest complaint that we get.
Let me ask you this, is there residential parking restriction in this area?
No, for the most part, we don't. You mean the signs, right?
Right, signs.
No, we don't do the signs.
Okay.
But so I think their concern is that sometimes the vehicles are marked commercial, but they're not ticketed,
Right.
and sometimes it's clearly commercial just because of the license.
License plate, correct.
License plates on it, but they're not ticketed. Or the other issue it is sometimes where it doesn't appear, but you see, and I've heard this come up with the captain also, that someone parks 5 or 6 cars regularly in one area, and they are able to circumvent any types of DC law, and the police can't do much about it.
Well, is this overnight, or is he doing the daytime?
It's usually overnight.
Okay. DDOT does what we call reciprocity. They do all that enforcement stuff like that. And the reason why they do it real efficiently and more better is they have tag readers that they use to document vehicles in certain blocks, and they don't have DC tags or whatever. They give people out-of-state license plate, but they got commercial tags on it. DDOT usually can ticket that, and they do work at night because I see them all the time. So we normally refer that to DDOT, residential parking stuff and things like that, because that's what they do full time. But I'll check and see. Do you have the specific block you talking about?
I do, and I'll be glad to provide.
Please give it to me off the record. I go by tonight and see what the deal is with that. There's only so many funeral homes here, so I can narrow that down.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I use my question back and try to figure out what's going on. Okay, no problem. Anybody else? MPD wise, crime wise, traffic? Nope. Okay. Any questions from you? No? Excited. Okay. All right. Thank you. Take over.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good afternoon, happy holidays. So just to introduce myself, I'm here usually every meeting, but my name is Kayvon Miles. I'm a Ward 7 native and actually serve as a Ward 7 liaison to Mayor Bowser in the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services. And what that office does is we are responsible for community relations throughout Ward 7, Northeast and Southeast, and all government services. So all 53 agencies that are encompassed within the district government, it is my responsibility to make sure those services are being properly delivered and servicing Ward 7 residents correctly and how you guys see fit. So tonight, very brief is the beginning of the year, so we off to a great start. No complaints, anything like that. Well, if you guys have issues or concerns for me, I'd love to take those back to my office and work on them for you. But most importantly, I passed around the weekly newsletter that comes out from the mayor. And this week particularly talks about her transition, her accountability report. And this is our 3rd year, so it talks about a lot of the accomplishments that the district government and the Mayor Bowser's administration has been able to gain and bring to the city. If you go through it, it also details a lot of information about upcoming opportunities that are taking place in the city, particularly the MLK Day of Service. And this year we have 2 days of service that are available for individuals to come out and serve. On Saturday, January 13th, and also Monday, January 15th, which is the usual observation day. And this year, like we do every year, we'll be doing the MLK Service Day Parade starting at Anacostia Park. So last year we started at the top of the hill. I think maybe where St. E's campus is, where the Ride Center is, and we walk down the hill. But this year we're going to do an opposite effect because we got some complaints about too much walking on the hill. And we got a lot of senior participation, so we don't want to deter that, and we know it's cold. So we're going to start at the bottom of the hill from Anacostia Park to make it easier, and we're actually going to walk up and make it a little shorter and more robust of a parade up to Berry Farm. And so that'll be starting, we'll start gathering around 11 a.m. Where Good Hope and MLK meets, right there, that basically is like the gateway to Anacostia before you go over the 11th Street Bridge. We'll be gathering there at 11 o'clock, and the parade starts promptly at 11:45, and we go from there up until 2 o'clock. So if you guys are interested in walking, if you guys want to bring goods, we also provide a lot of resources to the needy in the community. So if you guys got coats or shoes or food or toiletries, things like that you would like to bring to give to the needy, that's people will be there to receive that, or individuals who will be appreciative of those goods will be on site for you to connect with. It's going to be an awesome day. Hopefully we're coming into a bit of a heat front, so it's not going to be too cold this weekend. So you don't have to bring your super big winter coat. So it's going to be nice. I'll be there. The mayor will be there. If you guys want to walk with us, just let us know. We can put you on the list, and you can put you in the front. You can hold a banner. Anything you want to do. You want to throw beads or give out stuff, throw balls. It's really a fun time. So please join us. Also, leaf season is ending, so we're coming into Christmas tree collection. I know some people may have gotten late leaf collection due to the small snow flurries that we get each time that we get a winter weather advisory. DPW and DDOT and a few other agencies going to full-fledged, so leaf season will stop, or you may see there may be a delay in your trash, even in your trash collection, because we employ all of the DPW and all of the DDOT to focus just on treating the streets and making sure we have trucks ready to go. But leaf season should be wrapping up, I believe, this week. And Christmas tree season should be kicking off next week. So if you got your trees out already, that's perfect. If not, you got a few extra days to still get your holiday spirit in, and then we'll be around and collect them. There's also a great job announcement right now, which I'm actually going home to edit my resume from the Homeland Security Agency for a fusion intelligence analyst. So if you guys are interested in career opportunities with the district government, you can always visit careers.dc.gov. There are always plenty of positions. Or if you're interested more specifically working in the mayor's office, MOTA.dc.gov, which is the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments, and that's a great place also to get information about appointments. Also, that's where all the information is for the boards. If you flip through the rest of the pamphlet, there's some general information about DC values. We know this is a challenging time in DC right now with the political climate, the Trump administration, and a lot of different things going on. So we always just want to affirm and let people know where we stand as Washingtonians, and what we will accept and how we feel about things. Great program this year. The funding is still going, and there is still money available. So if you do not have, or if you have not taken advantage of the private security camera program, and this year we've expanded it. There's a private security camera program where we rebate you up to, I believe, $750 if you're a business and $500 if you're a resident or a private home. And we also have a voucher program. So there were some people who didn't have the $500 or $700 to put up front. And so if you qualify, if you're a senior or individual who's receiving some type of public assistance, if you call in and you talk with the department of the Office of Aging, they can talk to you and talk about the requirements and how you can qualify for a voucher. And a lot of our seniors, if you qualify for Safe at Home or any of the DCOA programs, you're more than eligible for the voucher program, which is excellent. You basically get a free or maybe 2 free security cameras for your home, one for the front, one for the back. And they do all of the installation, all the wiring, all the contracting. It's all taken care of by the district, so can't beat that at all. And the last one, some information about Safe at Home. So if you're interested in some of those improvements and any of those services being delivered to you, the information is here for you. My favorite flyer is on the back, 311. This right here is the key to the city, as I see it. Any and everything that you need delivered or that you want done in the community, and more than likely goes through this system here, 311. And unfortunately, in Ward 7, we have the lowest, or the second lowest usage of 311 throughout Rose City. Ward 8 is first, and then comes Ward 7. So what does that mean? That means all of the potholes, the street lights, the uneven alleys, the uneven roads, a lot of the small things that you see that the district is responsible for maintaining and taking care of. Individuals, our neighbors, they're not taking the initiative to, you know, we see a pothole or we see your stop signs turned upside down, or I had somebody call me last night and they said the whole 2500 block of 34th Street in Hillcrest is out of streetlights. And it's been done for a month, but only one person called to tell me after it's been maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So what we're trying to do is we want to highly encourage everybody. If you see something, just pick up the phone and call 311. And you don't even have to call. If you're technologically savvy, you could go online, www.311.dc.gov. We have a mobile application, which is excellent. You can put in your service request in under 30 seconds. It takes no time. And even in the phone, I know in the past, a lot of people complain about the wait time that it took to get on the phone and it was too long with operators. Totally revamped the system. We've hired about maybe 40 to 50 new operators at 311. So if you're on the phone, if you call 311, usually in under 30 seconds, you're on the phone with a live operator who's there to help you. We're not just transferring you off, anything like that. We're making sure we're giving you the proper information. And I think what's most important, if you do, and when you do call 311, please ensure that you're taking down the service request number. It's like a receipt. So if you call in and you let us know, hey, I want my alley repaved, they should most definitely give you a service request number that'll connect your request, the time, the date, what you asked for, what agency is responsible, and usually it gives you a timeline of how long you should expect it to be assessed or the work to take place. That number is critical because when you come to the next meeting, you're like, hey, Kayvon, I called 311 and I asked them to come out and fix my street lights or fill this pothole, and it's been 3 weeks, I don't know what's going on. First thing I want to know is, what's the service request number? Because that number right there gives me the power. I have a receipt from the Penn Branch Civic Association letting me know that there's a light blown out here on 30th Street. It's been out for 3 weeks. And the time request said 5 days, so what's going on? And with that number, now I can hold the agency, DDOT, DPW, whomever accountable for the timeline and the work to be done. And it helps us really track the performance of the agency, so we actually know what type of work is getting done, when it's getting done, how it's being completed. So please encourage your neighbors. If you guys see issues, if you're in your car, if you're stuck in traffic, take 30 seconds to put some issues in. Even if you don't want to do it, maybe get a list together. And you can call me and I'll take all the issues down and I'll put them in myself personally and follow up with you. Whatever works best. I just want to get us from the second lowest usage because we need to be up there with Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5. A lot of the services and the roads and the lights and the things that we see in other parts of the city. It's not because, you know, all of these different ideas we have about why certain parts of the city get different services. If you look at the numbers, most of us are professionals, we know how statistics work. We're literally not reporting the issues that we have to the city for them to take action. And so it's a simple fix. It doesn't fix everything, but it really helps us if we at least know what's going on so that we know who's responsible. We can get them out there fast because a lot of times we have the resources to take care of these things, but we don't want to aimlessly or blindly go out and just start servicing or, you know, dumping asphalt places and fixing lights that don't need to be fixed. So if we know specifically in Penn Branch, you know, there are 4 or 5 streets that need some special attention, we can go out and do that because we have specific service requests. We know we've spoken to neighbors or a number of neighbors. Also, frequency means a lot. So if you're trying to get an alley done, it's more if you have 30 houses on your house. If I have 27 service requests compared to 2, I can make a better argument for you when I go to DDOT and ask, you know, for your alley to be expedited. So, you know, a lot of this is statistics, and that's, you know, that's usually how like big governments work. So the more service requests that we can get, the more work we can get done, the quicker we get it done, the nicer we can keep our neighborhoods. So it's super simple. The parade starts at 11 a.m. or we're going to start gathering at 11 a.m. on Saturday, or Monday, excuse me. It's a 3-day weekend. January 15th at 11 a.m. at the intersection of Good Hope and MLK Southeast. So if you guys are interested in participating in the parade or walking with the mail or donating any goods to the needy, please be there. Other than that, I have no more announcements, and I'd love to take concerns if there are any.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for sharing about the 311.
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate whoever called, maybe not someone in our neighborhood, but there was a pothole on Pennsylvania Avenue, just as you come underneath the bridge before you get to Minnesota Avenue, that I ran over yesterday. And tonight when I came home, I tried to avoid it, and lo and behold, it was already filled up. So I was thankful for whoever.
Yeah, certain things actually get done. Like potholes, we can fill potholes usually under 24 hours. We have like a team that works night round, and they get a list every day that's submitted for potholes across the city. And it's very simple. Like most of the time, they just go on and they take some high asphalt and they fill in a circle and they smooth it over and they're out of there in under 5 minutes. And usually, I think before the fall ends, we do a pothole palooza. So we get maybe 10 trucks that go around the whole city, and all they do all day is just fill potholes before the snow and stuff comes. Street lights. If your street light is out, if you reported to us, I think the timeline right now is 2 days. So within 24 hours, somebody's out to see what's going on, whether it's a blown bulb or it might be an electrical issue in the ground, or we might have to replace the whole pole. Within 24 hours, somebody's out there to assess what's going on, and more than likely the next day the issue is going to be fixed. So a lot of the very small common issues, we can have them fixed very quickly, but we just need to know ahead of time or on time so that we can respond appropriately.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, guys.
All right, Kayvon, thank you very much.
No problem.
So, I know in interest of our speaker, but we have one more announcement that I do want to put on this. Sean Moore, who's been patiently waiting in the back of the room. And by the way, we do have food back there, so feel free to eat down. You don't have to wait, and then we'd like to have it required when our speaker comes in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Moore, and I've been here a few times before, usually working on DDOT projects. And today I just wanted to come by. I dropped off the flyer here. The new Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge project is underway. $441 million project, the largest project undertaken by the District of Columbia, Department of Transportation, and I'm pretty excited about that. This project has $90 million worth of DBE opportunities. A bit of that has been spent already, but there's about $70 million more left of DBE contracting opportunities. I'm here today because we're having a DBE open house coming up on Thursday, January 25th. You can learn about the different opportunities, contracting opportunities that are available for the project. If you have questions, you can always email me or call me. My contact information is on here. Or you can also visit our website at southcatbridgeproject.com. It's also on the flyer. On the back, it's just some information about the project, but the particulars about the open house for the DBEs is right here on the front. So just take a look. If you don't, even if you don't have any, if you don't have a contracting firm or a company, if you know someone else, if you know, can you hear me? If you know someone else who has a construction company, who has a contracting company, who does painting, who does all types of different services, and there's a list on the website, please encourage them to come and to visit the website, to submit their credentials, to come out and meet our team. Because like I said, we have a big goal and we're committed to meeting that goal. And we want to make sure that this money gets spent in our community specifically. So just wanted to come by and say that to you. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, like I said, my contact information is here on the flyer. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. As Jimmy mentioned earlier, we're in our membership drive season. We've been a little bit delayed with the weather and the holiday season, so Jimmy and I spoke today, and we basically acknowledge that our membership drive is a little bit stalled, but we're going to pick it back up as the warmer weather comes up. We'll get out to the neighborhood. We'll give our membership forms to the houses, which generally results in people mailing in checks and signing up for the year. There's always a little bit of confusion because of our year being a fiscal year and not a calendar year, so people sign up and they don't realize that it's the new season and they think they've paid for the calendar year. So a little bit of confusion there, and that's maybe something the organization can look at changing in the future. to make it a little bit more user-friendly. We do have an update to the newsletter that's in the works, and generally anytime we submit something to the neighborhood via the block captains, we put membership forms on there, just so that if you get the first membership form and you don't think about submitting it or you lose it, you'll probably get one, a few weeks later. We usually always have a very good turnaround of membership form delivery to checks being mailed in. So when Matt gave his treasury report today, we look at that number and we say, okay, it's not where we want to be. We'd like to have a much higher treasury, as every organization does. But we know that once we start the membership drive and it gets a little bit warmer, we can go door to door again, the number will start to climb up pretty quickly. Just a couple of, we'll just get into some of the new business while we have a minute to wait. Next month, our guest speaker is going to be Police Chief Newsham. They just confirmed with us today. So Jimmy will probably put out an email blast to the neighborhood, but we would like to have questions for the police chief submitted ahead of time so we can give them to him so he can come prepared with the information. Running the police department is difficult because it's such a large organization. If he comes here and gets asked questions that are very specific to 60 or our particular neighborhood, he may not have the information. So we'd like to give him the questions ahead of time. If you have any questions that you would like me to ask, just you can ask me today and I'll write them down and send to him, or we'll try to get an email blast out closer towards next month so that we can give them questions. We have a pretty good lineup of speakers coming in, so we're looking at bringing in Director Marudian, who's the new director of DDOT. I believe he was just confirmed today by the council. He's looking at coming in for March, and then we had a little bit of demand for a CPR program, so we're working on that with the fire department now, where they'll come in and the fire chief will come in and present, and we'll also do a what's called a hands-on heart program, where they come in and train whoever shows up to the meeting on CPR. So that's in the works as well.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get on and move on with our guest speaker. Roy, thanks a lot for the announcements. So, as you said, our guest tonight is Ed Lazier from the DC Fiscal Policy Institute. For those of you, a lot of people who are very active in DC know a lot about the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, but for those of you all who don't, DC Fiscal Policy Institute, as I mentioned earlier, is involved in a lot of the key issues that are impacting our city. They have the data, they have the numbers, they understand the budget. Ed himself has led DC Fiscal Policy Institute since its start in 2001, and DC Fiscal Policy Institute has become one of the primary sources of independent information on the DC budget. I can actually say that if you go to a member's office on a lot of those budget issues, you know that one of the stops and one of the phone calls is going to be with DC Fiscal Policy Institute. Ed himself, as an individual, is a leading expert on the district's budget and tax system, and he's looked at it as a resource on a number of issues. His work has contributed to a lot of major changes in the DC policy outcomes, including the creation of the largest state-level earned income tax credit for the working poor, expansions of funding for affordable housing, established for the requirement of all proposed business tax breaks to undergo an independent financial analysis to be analyzed before they go to the DC City Council. Ed's work has received numerous honors, including awards from Bread from the City, the Legal Aid Society, the DC Department, DC Employment Justice Center, the Center for Nonprofit Advancement, DC Jobs of Justice, and I can go on and on. Ed has also served as chair for the Public Education Finance Reform Commission. So without saying any more, I can talk about Ed personally from what I've known and the impact, but I'm going to shut up because you're here to hear Ed. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Lazier.
All right. So thank you for that really nice introduction. It's for my bio, I wrote it, so I'm just bragging about myself basically, but thank you for listening. So I'm really happy to be here tonight and to talk with you a little bit about myself and what I do, and to learn more about what you are interested in particularly the issues that might matter to you that we can talk about related to the city's budget, because it is the start of DC budget season, and you have the honor. I love doing budget season presentations. You guys are the first presentation that I've done in 2018. You guys are on the ball, so you deserve a round of applause for that. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, which I have run for 17 years, and when I started, I did not have any gray hair. So our mission is to make sure that the city's resources are being used as effectively as possible for the things that matter to all of us. And that could include things from schools, to libraries, to healthcare, to affordable housing. We particularly focus on issues that address the city's racial and economic inequities, the really big gaps that we all know exist, and to do things that will increase economic opportunity for DC residents. And we do that by doing research on the challenges facing residents, like the loss of affordable housing, or an economy that's growing but wages that are not, all across the board. And then we use that research to partner with advocacy organizations, policymakers, community groups to design solutions, either through changing the city's policies or through changing the city's budget, holding the mayor and council accountable to spending our resources, again, as wisely as possible to meet the things that are important to us. So we work on issues like housing and homeless services, education, including early education, job training, healthcare, job quality issues like minimum wage and paid family leave. And we also focus on tax policy, because how much the city raises and who pays are really important questions, because we have to have a balanced budget. I will just take a pause to say there was a really big victory today that you may or may not have heard about. In the City Council passed a public financing for elections law that will allow people to run for office and get small donations that are matched 5-to-1, which is a model across the country. It'll enable a lot more people to run for office who wouldn't be able to raise the money than before. And it also will increase all of our power in that we know that if we make a small donation, it's going to get quintupled, and that our donations will matter in a way that maybe more than they do now. So, so those are the things that we work on. For me personally, I'm a 31-year DC resident. It's my only adopted, or my only chosen place to live. I moved here when I graduated from college and started working for an organization called the Higher Achievement Program, now just called Higher Achievement, that some of you know. I worked in Mount Pleasant and really got to know the children there and the schools there, and it was an amazingly rewarding experience. I got married here in the district and bought my first and only home in Brookland 25 years ago. We actually looked in this neighborhood, my wife and I, but on 2 nonprofit salaries. We couldn't afford the beautiful homes and the big yards around here, so we ended up in Brookland. We were happy to do that. We have 2 children. They're now 20 and 23. Both of them went through DC public schools, and we're really, really proud of what they've accomplished. And so as I hope you can tell, I feel rooted to this community, to the city. I love the district, and I'm really honored that I get to go to work every day and do things that I think are helping all of us create a stronger city. So what I'm going to do now is walk through some slides with Ellison's help to talk about some of what we see in the city's economy, what's working well, and honestly a lot of what's not working well. A lot of the figures you're going to hear are sort of stark, somewhat depressing. Sometimes audiences get really down when I talk about these figures. I don't think they're going to necessarily be a tremendous shock to you all, and maybe giving you a little bit of warning helps you prepare for them. I want us to face these hard numbers so that we can talk about the solutions. I don't present these numbers to depress you. I present them to think about these are the issues that we all should be addressing as our community. So, with that, we're actually going to, when I give you the clue, yeah, let's go to the next one actually. Okay. I did too many slides and I don't want to waste your time. So I'm going to talk for a little bit, but then what I want to do is hear from you about what you think about what you've heard, but also what is important to you that maybe we can advocate for together around the city's budget this year. So I think we all know the city's economy is growing. We are a strong, prosperous city, but I think we also know that that prosperity is not evenly shared. We are not a rising tide that's lifting all boats, and in particular we see tremendous gaps in income and wealth when we look at race. So I think it is a shame that the median household income for black households in the district is under $40,000, while it's over $120,000 for white households. That's a gap that is too large. It's even more shocking when you look at wealth and assets, and you see that the median household wealth for black households in the district is just $3,500 compared to almost $300,000 for white households. Those are the things that get me up to go to work every day that we all should be working on. We should not be satisfied with those outcomes. And now that the city is as strong as it is, we should be doing what we can to reduce those. Next slide, please. Yep. So 1 in 5 children, what does that mean? So I'm going to start talking about some particular issues that affect DC residents. And the first I'm going to talk about is affordable housing. So 1 in 5 children refers to the fact that across the city, if you take all the children, 1 in 5 is in a family that has both an extremely low income and where the family is spending more than half of their income for housing. 1 in 5 children. And of course, if you come to, in certain east of the river and in other neighborhoods, it's even higher than that. And that is a problem because, not shockingly, if you are spending more than half of your income for housing, it's very likely that your refrigerator is not full, right? It is very likely that you might not have even the money to get on the bus to get to your job or get your children to child care. We know that when parents don't have enough to pay their rent, that they're just constantly under stress, and that stress flows down to the children, and then those children take that stress with them to school, and it is hard to learn when children are facing that kind of stress. We know that when families are in that kind of situation, they are often living in situations that are unsafe, unhealthy, in neighborhoods that they'd rather not be in, or living with people who their parents may not actually be crazy about them living with, but they have no choice. They also often are living in situations that are physically dangerous with mold and things like that that contribute to high rates of asthma. So this is an enormous problem. It's not just a housing problem, it's a child development problem, and we need to be doing more about it. The good news is the city is doing a lot on affordable housing. The bad news is it's not enough. And that is the next slide, please, Elsie. We'll go one more. There we go. So I don't know how well you can read these, but I will walk you, particularly if you're in the back, but I will talk you through them. So there's 2 sets of bars here. The darker colored bars are the number of households that have severe housing problems, meaning they're spending more than half their income on housing. And we know that for the lowest income families, and that's below $30,000 for a family of 4, there are 25,000 households right now who spend more than half of their income for housing. And yet, in the last few years, the city has only produced a few thousand affordable housing units for those families. We are not coming anywhere close to meeting the need. There are also families with more moderate incomes who have affordable housing problems, but it's not as many, and yet the housing that the city's been building, maybe this chart shows you on the right, we've actually built more affordable housing for moderate income families than we have for the lowest income families. So there's a set of priorities that are a little bit wrong there. We would like to see more of the city's affordable housing being built for those very low income families who face the most severe housing challenges. Yeah, I'm gonna take a breath. I'll let you stare at this one for a second as well. So now I'm jumping to healthcare, and I am trying to go through this fast because I want to make sure I get to your questions. So the District of Columbia is in many ways a model in its healthcare coverage. We cover all individuals with incomes up to 200% of poverty, which is about $40,000 for a family of 3. And for children, it's actually up to 300% of poverty. We even created a program 20 years ago called the Healthcare Alliance for people who don't qualify for Medicare and don't qualify for Medicaid, and many of those are immigrants who are not allowed to participate in those programs. So we are a model in providing healthcare and have one of the highest rates of health insurance coverage in the country, over 95% of our residents. So it's our tax dollars being used for something really good, I think we should all be proud of. But it's not always enough. So when you look at this chart, what we looked at were the share of folks who are uninsured. And I particularly point to you the fact, and I have to pick this up to read it myself, that over 10% of Latinx families do not have health insurance. It's much higher than any other group in the city. And that largely reflects that our program, that Healthcare Alliance program that is there to serve immigrants, it's a generous program in terms of eligibility, but it's really hard to get on the program and stay on the program. 6 years ago, the city said, if you want to stay in this program, you have to come to a social service center every 6 months just to prove who you are and that your income hasn't changed. And you can imagine if transportation is hard for you, if taking off time from work without pay is hard for you, you may not go in and get that health insurance on a day that you feel well, but you don't think your health is in danger. And as a result, a lot of families, we think there are as many as 10,000 DC residents who are eligible for health insurance but aren't getting it because we've created this barrier to get it. And it shows up in this number with over 10% of Latinx families not having health insurance. All right, we are going to move along. Let's keep going. Yeah, one more. This is another one that may be hard for you to see, and I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about schools now. And again, I think we have a city that should be proud of our public schools, and that we've also invested heavily in supporting school choice through charters, although I know certainly initially when charter schools started, when my children started in public schools, I was not a huge fan of a large charter school sector. I think it's now a factor of life in the district that we have two equal sectors, public schools and charter schools. And so at this point, I think our goal is to make sure that both are successful. But what I want to talk about here, and the concern I have, is what are we doing to address the challenges for the students who go to the schools with the highest poverty rates, like Ballou High School that's been in the news so much, where we thought it was such a great story, but in fact it was not as rosy as it turned out to be. And one of the issues that concerns me, and is that a lot of our low-income students are in schools where the poverty rate itself is very high, and that means more children are coming to school with the kind of challenges and barriers that the lack of affordable housing and joblessness create. And there's just tons of research that says schools are most successful when they have a mix of incomes, and when children who are low income are in a mixed income school, they do far better even if nothing else is different other than the income mix within that school. So I'm going to pick this one up, and again, if that may be a little bit hard for you to interpret, but the thing that stands out to me is that black children in this city, they tend to go to schools where between 40 and 80% of the students are low income. Meanwhile, about 80% of white students are in schools where the poverty rate is less than 20%. That is not an easy thing to overcome, because it also reflects the housing challenges in the city and the housing segregation that we face. But if we're going to make schools better, part of what we need to do is help create more mixed income schools, but also devote more resources to those high poverty schools where we know there are more challenges. And that's where the budget comes in, and that's where I'm going to bring you to the next slide. Which, yeah, I apologize if these are hard to read. Every slide that pops up, I'm like, they probably can't read those numbers, but let me walk you through them. So I'm proud that 5 years ago I served and chaired a commission on school finance reform created by then Mayor Gray. And at that time, the school funding formula, it's always been a per student funding formula. There was no distinction in the funding that was provided for a student from a very high income family and for a student from a very low income family, even though we know that children who are in families with low incomes, they probably need more resources to compensate for the lack of resources at home. And so we recommended as a commission that an element to the school funding formula be added it's called at-risk funds, to help provide additional funding to schools that have children with those needs, to be able to do things like smaller class sizes or more mental health professionals, or to pay for a band or after-school programming or summer programming, the kinds of things that we know will make a difference in those students' lives. And we were successful. It was created. There is an at-risk formula that provides $2,000 for schools for every low-income child they have. The problem, however, is that money's not as available as it might seem. It's $2,000, but it's not really $2,000. It's a little bit of budget chicanery, if that's the right word. So the challenge is, I'll give you an example. It's a year old, but Anacostia High School gets $1 million in these so-called at-risk funds. That's $1 million that should be there, again, to hire more social workers, to pay for sports or clubs or other after-school programs. But Anacostia High School was required to use 80% of that money just to pay for regular standard positions that every other school gets, like an attendance counselor. Yeah. Yes, I see your faces, right? What gives? And that, we can go through why. You can ask me why later. I can speculate as to why. In the real, the more significant fact is that this is happening. And so money that is supposed to be supplementing services in schools where children have low incomes is actually not being used to supplement. It's just being used to pay for core positions. We, with the help of Mary Levy, who's an education finance expert in the city, have estimated that about half of the money that is devoted to these so-called at-risk services half of it is being depleted because schools are being forced to use it for basic services. So that means that students are being robbed of the opportunities for things that will help them succeed. So one of our goals for this coming year is that shouldn't happen anymore. We need to stop robbing those students of their opportunities. We need to make sure that every at-risk dollar is a supplemental dollar. We need to make sure that parents and teachers in those schools know that the money's there and that they have some say. If we've got $1 million at Anacostia High School, for example, those parents should be able to say, here are the things that we think would make this school stronger and should have control over that, rather than being told, no, you have to pay for your attendance counselor with that. That's a top priority for us at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, and I would hope that you would join me in that. So I do have a few other slides, but I think it is way enough into the evening that I'm going to stop there, because I want to, hear if you have any responses to what you've heard tonight from me. But more importantly, I'd like to hear what's on your mind, if you're thinking about the budget and what you think your community needs, and how we might fight for that. So, yeah, thank
I
you.
have a question. Why aren't those funds classified as restricted?
Well, it's this, I don't know if there's any lawyers in the room. So I mean, by law, when it was first discovered that they were not being used the way they were supposed to, the chairman of the Education Committee of the Council passed a law to say those funds have to only be used to supplement, they can't be used to supplant. And then, unfortunately, DCPS basically said, well, we don't have enough money for all the schools, so we have to do it. So the challenge is that there's no legal right to sue. The district, DCPS is not doing the right thing, and they will acknowledge it, and they say if we have more money, we could do the right thing, but they're simply, we're letting them get away with it. That is the sad answer. And there's no student, unfortunately, has the legal right to say, I was robbed and I'm going to sue you for that. It's just the reality. And it's only going to work through advocacy from folks like us to say, stop doing that, because it's wrong. Yes?
Could it be that they don't have the strong PTSOs or PTOs or PTAs that other schools have, and the parent voices are not being heard because of the fact that they don't have these PTOs or PTSOs?
So for those who heard whether those schools that don't have a strong PTA or a local school advisory team, it's possible, although I actually think that's not the answer for two reasons. One is the budget is passed to them from on high. They don't have the choice over that total amount. DCPS says you get this amount, and then you have to decide what to do with it. And the other issue that's been on my mind for the last few years is when DCPS gives schools that money, it's in a form that's not very clear. So it's not clear, for example, how much money the school has in that discretionary at-risk pot, and it's not clear to the parents, or even the principal really in many cases. I was on the local school advisory team at School Without Walls, and we got the budget, and there was a line that said at-risk, but we didn't know what it was for, and we certainly did not know. No one told us, you really should decide how this money gets spent, and it's intended to provide supplementary services. Here are some ideas. There's just a lack of information. So one of our goals is to make sure that the public schools are in fact informing the parents and the teachers and at each school that this money is available for this purpose, and you have the flexibility to spend it. So it's really just not even telling them that they have this money that's available.
Because you mentioned that the parents would say more about it, maybe they would use the money for the funding that is intended
Yep.
to be for.
Yep. So
But we don't have these type of organizations within the schools. I mean, Mr. Trogish, I'm sure he's running a good thing at SWW.
He is.
But at Anacostia, I mean, you have several parents who are very active with SWW. You don't have that at Anacostia.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious what you think, but I don't feel like it's the parents' responsibility to make sure DCPS is spending its money right. I think it's our job as a community to make sure that the city is following the rules and giving the money to the schools and to the students who need it, and then letting the parents decide how to spend it rather than the parents having to fight to enforce the rules that are already on the books.
Okay, can you break down what the Fiscal Policy Institute studies and what, I guess, topics that you pick? Because anytime you watch a city council hearing, you'll see people petitioning the council to spend all sorts of money, and the city always has this constant struggle to balance some of the rainy day fund versus new projects. And I know the Fiscal Policy Institute picks a lot of topics to study. So how do you break down what you look into and provide policy solutions for?
Yep. So we try to cover as many issues as possible with our relatively small staff. We're just a staff of 9 people. But within that, it is all, for us, it is all focused on those economic and racial inequities and things that are about economic opportunity. So it is housing and homeless services, it's education and job training, it's childcare, healthcare, economic development, making sure that when the city spends economic development dollars, that we're actually getting good jobs in return, that we're getting the best use of our bucks. So for example, we don't have a staff person focused on public safety or transportation. We would love to, it's just in the nonprofit world, raising enough money to cover those sorts of things is hard. Okay. So I'm curious what's on, Jimmy, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I guess my question, and I always ask the same question, is two. One, because we want to make sure we plug people into you.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that we can do? I know we have a lot of issues that we're concerned. You talked about schools earlier. You talked about budget allocations. You talked about affordable housing. This area is a little bit different because we've been trying to get development for Penn Branch Shopping Center. We want a little bit of affordable, but we also want a little bit of middle income. But what are some of the things that we can do to basically support what you're doing when it comes down to budget decision, since we're right in the budget process?
Yes, well, I appreciate you saying that. So I'll talk a little bit about the budget process. I'll talk about how you can help me, but also maybe how I can help you as well. So the mayor releases her budget in the middle of March 21st, and then the council will have about 2 weeks to spend it. So that actually means that right now is a really critical time in the budget process. And any organization that cares about the budget is thinking about what do we want to ask the mayor, and they're often putting it together in a letter or a fact sheet and sending it to the mayor. They're trying to meet with the mayor's folks, which is not always easy to do. Going to the mayor's budget engagement forums, which she has every year, which I don't know if they've been scheduled yet for this year, I haven't heard, but it's, as you all know, you're active in your community. If the mayor's not hearing from you, if the council's not hearing from you, they may not know the problem exists. And they certainly, in the mayor who is, as you said, Roy, trying to balance all these diverse interests, like, we could come up together today with things that would spend the DC budget 3 times over, and the mayor has to figure out how to spend it in the most important ways that are going to make the most number of voters happy, right? And that means that we all just need to be super vocal about what we're asking for, and also in some ways making the strong case that what you need is important. You don't have to understand the DC budget in any detail. You really just need to have the facts in hand of, we know that, for example, this playground hasn't been renovated in 20 years, while across the city most are under 10 years old or something like that. You don't have to have a ton of data. You have to have enough to make your case, and you have to have enough people echoing it so that the policymakers, the mayor, and your council members hear that issue. In terms of what you can do to support me, I'm going to, before I go, no, not slides. So I brought some postcards. So one of the things that I am honored about in the work I do is that I do research that people find helps them make their city better and helps them understand the city better, like what I talked about tonight. So we spend about half of our time at the Fiscal Policy Institute doing research and putting out short analyses that are intended to be user-friendly on these issues. We have a blog where we write 2 to 4 times a week, and each blog is a one-pager on an issue that are like the issues you heard about tonight. So hopefully if you subscribe to our blog, you will be an educated DC resident, educated consumer. And I have postcards that tells you how to sign up for our blog, and I'll hand those out before I go tonight. So first of all, just being educated, obviously being here tonight means that you care, and I appreciate that. Being educated on these issues is important, and to the extent that you have the time and energy when an issue is coming up, and you see an email from us about a vote that's coming up in the council, for you to weigh in with the mayor or with the council to let them know that you support it. We often will also have sign-on letters where individuals or organizations can sign on. So whether it's you as an individual or an organization you sign on, the Civic Association itself, it would be great to have you sign on when we're saying to the mayor, make sure that you fully fund schools next year and give that at-risk money to every school that's supposed to get it. Having the Civic Association sign on to that would be amazingly helpful if we had organizations across the city. So if we do a sign-on letter, we'll pass it to you, Jimmy, and then you all maybe can vote as an organization. In terms of how I can help you, obviously my goal here tonight is to help you understand a little bit about the process, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you have. But all of you should feel free to reach out to me or my staff when you have a particular issue, so that we can help you make the case for whatever it is that you're fighting for.
I'm just curious, do you also provide like suggestions of allocation of funds with your analysis, or is it just strictly analysis and statistics?
We do make recommendations for allocations of funds. So again, one example would be what we're recommending for schools. Another is around affordable housing. So the city is spending a record amount on affordable housing. You probably have heard the mayor say she put $100 million into that housing fund that builds affordable housing, and she did. And that's a lot of money, and it's actually a record in the city's history. And yet, when you look at the overall DC budget, we spend 3% of our budget on affordable housing. And I think if I asked you all, is affordable housing more or less than 3% of the city's, in terms of its importance as an issue? It's higher than that, right? It's way higher than that, right? If you were to really think about what share of the budget should go to affordable housing, anybody have their own personal guess for what it would be? What would you, how much?
20%.
How much?
20%.
What did you say?
20%.
20%, right? I mean, that's about what we spend on schools, and affordable housing, I'd say, at this point, because not having affordable housing actually affects the ability of children to do well in school. If we really want children to do well, then we need to invest in schools, in housing, just like we invest in schools. So we do make recommendations for how much to spend. We've done an analysis that shows, for example, that the mayor, $100 million for affordable housing, just to keep up with the growing cost of construction and to produce the same number of units next year as it produced when she first proposed it, it needs to grow to 150 million. So that's what we're recommending as an example. Yes?
So the formula is pretty obvious that for kids to do well, for our society to flourish, and all of these things are in place, then is there any understanding as to how it became so inversely obvious? Because I mean, that seems pretty obvious. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And clearly it's like the train has already left the station as far as the amount of higher income and moderate income housing. So my question is, if the formula is so obvious, and your group is, and other groups like you are giving recommendations, is there any understanding as to how the train left the station the way it is?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what we see across when I go and talk to my colleagues in other places, and for the purposes of that, I talk to colleagues in other states. I think of DC as a state. These are state level functions. We are actually the envy of a lot of other states, because most other states, they'll take whatever the federal government provides for job training, for housing, for transportation, and that's it, because their residents are very anti-tax. And the district actually goes beyond that and puts its own money in. Housing, unfortunately, is just something that the federal government is actually neglected. So, in the late 1960s, we created Medicare and Medicaid and covered millions and millions of people with health insurance, and of course the Affordable Care Act went even further. I don't know when this food stamp program was created, but in the 1970s, they stopped making people pay for food stamps. You used to have to pay to buy your food stamps, and people couldn't afford to even buy food stamps. And they got rid of that, and now that's largely a universal program, that if you are low income and you're hungry, you can get food stamps. There's nothing like that for housing. We have a set of federal housing programs that cover about 1 out of 4 people who are eligible. 3 out of 4 are left to just be overcrowded in physically inadequate buildings, and it's super expensive. So to ask cities and states to pick up the slack is really hard. So the city DCS started. We just need to go a lot farther than we have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the question of recommendations for the Fiscal Policy Institute. You all take a position among the different sources of inequality and the outcomes that result in inequality. Do you put first or second or third among equals where the investment of DC resources would have the greatest follow-on consequences for trying to change some of the things that you see in the early graphs that you put up?
Yeah, that's another great question, and in some ways it is really hard to pick. So I do think that the things that I talked about tonight are the things that we think are fundamentally important. So certainly more investment in affordable housing, as well as more investment in homeless services. So my office is near Union Station. When I walked to my car tonight, under the train tracks, under the metro train tracks, I passed like 12 people who live in tents, and it's just, I'm almost at the point where I don't notice it anymore, which is a terrible shame, because every time I walk by one of those tents, I should just be ashamed for what my city has allowed, what we're all allowing to happen. So I'd like to see the city invest more in affordable housing because it is such a foundation. If you don't have affordable housing, it's hard to focus on anything else, including getting to a job, including getting to a doctor to get your prescription filled, including keeping your children safe. So affordable housing, I think, is critical. I also think it's really important to invest in, not surprisingly, education and training. And for me, that starts with our youngest children, 0 to 3, that critical period of brain development, where we know we're not currently, I didn't have a slide about that, but we're not putting enough into making sure that every child in the city can afford high-quality childcare. And anyone who has a child knows that childcare is crazy expensive, and yet what the city provides when it supports childcare is not enough for those providers to really have the quality that they would like to provide. So early education, K-12, more adult education and training. We've also been very active in things that try to make sure that the city's jobs are good jobs. So we supported raising the minimum wage, very supportive of paid family leave, which is not yet over the finish line and needs to be moved over the finish line so that people can take time from work when they have a sick relative or they have a new child. Probably those are, when I think about the things that we are focused on where we see the biggest gaps, those are probably the ones that are most important to us. So what's on your mind? What's in your community? What are you guys looking for that where you think that more resources are needed? Shopping center. And how do we do that? DEMPED, is that Deputy Mayor for Economic Development? Is that who needs to be in the room to talk about that? And what's the latest story? There is no shop. The shopping center is we want it to be redeveloped.
It's dilapidated.
And you were trying to recruit somebody to come in.
Run over top of it. I only say that because I grew up in this neighborhood with Mr. Chandler's daughter, and I remember that shopping center when it was thriving. We had a men's clothing store, a women's clothing store. We had a pizza shop that is nothing like the one that you see up there today. It was a record store. There were thriving businesses on the lower level as well as the top. That was our little stomping ground after school to stop at that shopping center. And it's sad because my kids did not get the same thrill, I guess, that I had growing up in this neighborhood. And, the involvement of that shopping center. It's just like, it makes me want to cry. And I'm at the point where I know there's some folks that are resisting it, but for me, it's an eyesore. I don't want to see it in my neighborhood looking like that because I remember what it used to look like.
And I'm sure the neighborhood could support something different. No, that's maybe not.
We've had a little resistance.
I see. No, I mean in terms of that if a shopping center were built, it would succeed. People would shop there, there's enough people in the area.
We have the
with enough
capacity.
money. You have the capacity to support it. Yes. Well, I know how important that is. I live in Brookland, and until a few years ago, we had 2 restaurants.
Right.
And
Now you got
now we got a restaurant 2 blocks from my house. I'm like, this is weird. I don't know what's going on here. What's that?
Careful what you ask.
Careful what you ask for, that's right. Well, and the sad part is it means that Brookland's a more popular neighborhood.
I missed it.
Homes that used to sell for $250,000 are selling for $1 million now. It's like, who can afford that?
But I mean, we can't resist change. Someone told me years ago, the only thing that's permanent is change. So if you think of it in that sense, we have to move forward. So, you can kind of help us.
Yep.
I think what concerns me is, that balancing act of how do we maintain enough money in the city bank account where we keep our bond ratings low at the same time that we're funding enough for projects that would benefit the overall city. But I also have a fear that, putting more money on top of problems is not the resolution. So how do we make sure that the right decisions are being made to spend that money more wisely, to have a human capital in the agencies that can come up with creative solutions that are more fiscally prudent? And aside from that, we have the litany of school issues, and personally from my experience, I've seen that it's sometimes the people behind spending the dollars and making the decisions more so than the money that make the big difference.
Yeah. I think we probably all have in our minds that whether it's DC government or federal government or the government where your parents live could be doing more and being more efficient. For me, the things, well, I guess I would first say, from my close-up view of DC government, lots of very dedicated workers, lots of really smart people who are working hard every day. That is, I think, for me, what I see as the norm. And I see, for the most part, programs that are making a big difference. And if we got rid of what you might consider, wasteful programs, it wouldn't be all that much in terms of dollars. That, for the most part, we're spending our money on schools, and most of that is just paying for teachers. We spend a lot of money on housing, and when that's spent, for the most part, that is going to build new affordable housing. So I do think that, and I don't know how we all advocate for this, or this is where my policy wonky side comes out. I don't know there's enough capacity in DC government to actually figure out what's the best way to spend the money. So the agencies are working so hard every day just to run the programs they have and put out the fires and deal with emergencies that not enough of them have the time. And I think it's also true that the council is also doing the same thing, that they don't have the time to sit back and say, what is the best way for us to be making sure that when we're doing job training, it actually results in somebody getting a job, good job, and keeping a good job. Because it's obviously a waste of money if you're training somebody and they're not getting a good job. Certainly donating to the DC Fiscal Policy Institute will help, because that's sort of what we're trying to do, whether it's inside government or outside policy analysis. And I'll give you one example of that to toot the horn of us and a series of other organizations, and it actually related to job training, is that in talking to adult education providers in recent years, we learned that a large number of the students weren't getting to class as often as 1/3 in any given day, just because they didn't have bus fare. They'd wake up, they didn't have bus money, they didn't get to their class. And yet the city was spending all this money, local and federal, on adult education. And it was 1/3 inefficient from the get-go, just because people couldn't get there, couldn't get on the bus. So we advocated for, and were successful, took 3 years, but to get the city to say, not only should kids be able to ride free to school, but adults in adult education should be able to ride free. So for an additional $2 million in transportation subsidies, the $80 million we spend on adult education is going to be a lot more efficient, because people are actually going to be able to get to class. So that's an example where it's still more money, but as long as you're thinking about it in smart ways, and this was a collective effort, I'm not going to take credit for it myself, you can make sure those dollars are being spent better. You got a question? I don't think you've asked me. Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. Mine is on education again. I'm good. When you were talking about the formula, I thought about something. Why the money may not be trickling down, because the formula is still there for. It's based on enrollment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm an auditor, and I pick a day to go to your school, and not all the students are at that school, because they're counting heads, say I'm 100 shy of students that day.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna, and the enrollment should be 1,000, but I only count 900. So you're only gonna get funding for 900 because I don't count the other. So that could be the reason why Anacostia could be in, or any other school could be in trouble. Those funds are there, but I end up having to take it to pay a teacher because 100 students didn't show up the day that I did the audit.
Yeah, I don't know how they actually do the audit. If anyone else here in the room might know better whether that's...
Before. That's the only reason I said.
Oh, you have? Yeah.
And I remember going to a school, and whenever they found out when we were going to show up at the school, they would bribe the kids with money, saying, if you come to school today, we'll give you $2.
Yeah. Well, you know, you want them to be counted. So
and then I've been chased out of schools because I missed one person because they showed up late, weren't there when I was actually doing the count. So they showed up and they're like, no, I need you to change my papers because I got a student here. I was like, was he in the class at the time that I took the audit? So, you know, so I'm saying if 100 could be the difference between 5 teachers in a school getting paid.
That's right. Yes. You had a question?
I was just curious, are all your charts and analysis readily available on your site?
Yeah, I don't, you know, and hopefully they're easy to find. I'm certainly happy to send this presentation through to Jimmy, and then he can pass it on to you all, or if if you just give me your contact information, I'm happy to send it to you. But yeah, we hopefully our website is, if not well organized, has a good search function, so whatever you're interested in, but it is tend to be organized by issue area, like school or housing or job training, and we certainly, our goal is to make sure that all this information is easily available.
Yeah, we'll make it easy and post it also on our website,
Okay.
but we'll link back to your site
Great.
also.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, you mentioned job training. I was just about to make a comment about one of the successful job training programs that was available through the city that I took advantage of a couple of years ago was for IT training. Several organizations, and one of the ones I used was the VETS Group, was funded through the DC government to offer IT certification training courses to the community or to the city residents. And it was an awesome program. I ended up getting my CompTIA Security Plus certification there, also took the Network Plus certification course, and that helped me basically transition into another job. And those courses are typically like $2,500 if I had to pay for it out of my pocket. So I really appreciate, having that particular service available. I don't know if your organization had anything to do with it.
So what's the name of the program? Who was it?
It was a job retraining.
Okay.
But the DC government funds these organizations for X number of students per, quarter.
Did you get a training voucher that you could
I
then
did.
take?
I did. A training voucher
Yeah.
came along with it that I used to take the training certification course.
That's great. Well, it means they're spending the money. Well, I think that's federal money we get from for job training. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that is federal money through WIA, and usually you can advocate through the local WIA board to where that type of money can be directed. So, Workforce Investment Advisory Board, every state has one, so you can, help direct where that money goes. One of the things that I was wondering about the at-risk funding, because I work for the feds, and usually what happens around the supplement, not supplant provision is if you can pressure whoever the administrative agency is to actually write that provision in supplement, not supplant, then what happens is for those who are making the grants, it's a trigger. And so I was just wondering, what agency is it again? Is it just DCPS?
Yeah, the challenge is that DCPS gets this big chunk of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're told, of that money, 50 million is at-risk money and it's supposed to go this way. And technically, it looks like it's going to the schools it's supposed to, but the rest of the money is sort of then supplanted. And
so it's not being tracked, basically.
It's not.
I got it. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
Last question. So, is there anything that's being done around that wealth building? So, one of the slides early on around wealth was a stark.
It's very shocking. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And so the issue around the older African Americans leaving the city and selling their houses is a wealth building tool. And to me, I'm just wondering, is there anything that's being done? Because a lot of folks, dating back to the 70s, moved out to the county. A lot of folks sold their house, or their kids took over the house.
Yeah.
And now it's at such a point where that house is worth a lot of money. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that you know of that's being done around that critical wealth building issue that could help change the dialogue?
So I don't know, but I think it's not enough. I mean, the things that come to mind to me, obviously for a lot of people, the wealth comes from buying a house. And we do have a program that helps people become first-time home buyers, the HPAC program, although the maximum amount you can get is $80,000, which may not really still make a home affordable. We could increase that amount. And in fact, as a city, I think where you were referring to, we have $2.5 billion in the bank. And our leaders have chosen largely to sit on it. Councilmember Grasso, who's got staff here, thinks we should spend some of that money. I think we should spend some of that money. I think it's actually, for someone who works on a budget and thinks about budgets and how they impact lives, it's almost immoral that we have $2.5 billion we're sitting on over here and we're not helping people buy homes. So we certainly could be helping more people and we could have larger loan amounts. And HPAP, by the way, is a grant to help buy your house, but you pay it back at some point. It's not a gift. A second thing that we could be doing is related to helping people start businesses, right? There are all these new businesses, including in my neighborhood. Many of us really like them, but when you look at who's opening them, it's not people of color, right? And if the median wealth is $3,500, there's no shock there. So can we use some of that asset that the city has as a way to provide guaranteed loans or some sort of training and startup money for people who want to start a business but don't have that advantage of inherited wealth? And then a third thing that comes to my mind is around helping people save money. We have a small number of programs that help people. If you save $1, we'll match it $1. And those are really important incentives for people who don't have very much money and are just trying to figure out how to stretch every dollar, encouraging people to save money, whether it's for college or to start a business or for them to go to school through match savings programs. We don't do enough of those. I think we could do that, and that would be a smart way to use our resources to help reduce some of those wealth inequities.
Thank you. Are you putting forth those ideas as proposals, or have they been presented already?
Well, you know, you can sort of see, I got all these ideas. So and the challenge is that getting somebody's attention is hard. So certainly we have talked about the HPAP program and increasing the size of that. My organization has spent years saying that it's a shame that we save so much money in our savings account and that we should spend it, and we've just not had any luck. So certainly always looking for more voices. Every year what we say is if the city ends the year with a surplus, put half in the bank and spend half of it. What have we been doing? We've been putting all of it in the bank. And you know, if you think about your own life, what would you do if you ended the year and you had a little bit more money? You probably would save some of it, but you might, repair that car or that roof or get a new couch, something, right? That to me seems like a responsible approach, but I'm told that's fiscally irresponsible. So it has not been successful. And I just started talking to somebody with the small business world. Think Local First is an association of small businesses about ways that the city might be able to invest some of its wealth in helping people start businesses who don't have much themselves.
Have your analysis group ever considered correlated with the CFO to kind of interject where you think money should be allocated as far as with education or anything like that? Being as though they typically regulate how money is spent and they deal with the program side of, allocating the money. Have you ever, because we're on a work smarter plan now, and now having a new CFO, it will probably be great to kind of deal with someone like you that can kind of speak to what's really happening within the city and kind of put them on a plan to really spend the money the way the money needs to be spent.
We try. I mean, the CFO, they'll tell you they're not supposed to make policy, and what they care about is financial stability. So if there's always a decision of should we spend it or should we save it, the CFO just tends to be on the we should save it side, because that's sort of their job, is to think about what might happen a few years down the road and being extra cautious. And in my opinion, it sometimes is extra cautious. So in some ways, we just play that different role where they say we should be cautious, and we come back and say, well, you can still build up your money and spend some of it. We try to sort of balance each other, and there's a lot of respect, but I don't know that it's going to be, we're ever going to be on the exact same page, because we sort of come at it from different angles. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Ed, thank you very much. And as I said, we will post this information on our website. If you have further questions for Ed, he'll be here in a few minutes. But we'll make sure to post that. And I know someone asked about the slides, so we'll make sure we post both of that. But you can also watch a recap of this presentation online. And again, thanks to Stan and Ash, you can see our proceeds from our meetings online. So with that being said, again, Ed, thank you very much. Committee reports, again, in the interest of time, we'll dispense with committee reports. But I do want to recognize the president of DC Federation, Earl Williams, who I saw walk in the room earlier. So, Earl, thank you very much for the work that you've done on behalf of the city. And Earl, of course, lives in Ward 7, has been very active here. So I want to make sure, again, Ed, thank you. So next thing that we have, I think we've already done the announcements. We talked about the membership drive. You're going to get newsletters, and we're going to pound that because we really want to make sure that we're able to do things, including like bringing food to that all costs money. So we need a robust membership, so we'll be working with our blog drivers and getting newsletters out and other information that we are, again, of interest. I see a question.
Yeah, what about
the coat drive? The coat drive. So let me switch hats for a minute. So the question that she's asking is about the coat drive. So this is Ward 7 Democrats, which is a different thing, and so I'll bracket that since this is a 501c3 and I'm switching to something else. So I'm chair of Ward 7 Democrats. So she just asked about the coat drive, the Ed Patillo coat drive. We've been working on the day of service, and thanks for reminding me, day of service. So one of the things that we will be doing, and the announcement should be going out tomorrow, we've been working with the march that Kayvon mentioned earlier to do 2 days of services. One day of service we'll take care of on Monday, where Ward 7 Democrats will pass out drinks and refreshments before the parade, but we'll also be collecting coats for the coat drive. And then secondly, on our meeting that will take place on the 27th of the month, we'll be doing something a little bit bigger before our meeting, but we'll also be collecting coat drives, and the benefits there will be going to the East of the River Family Service Collaborative. Thank you, got it. But that's just one of 2 things, but we'll probably do something little. But so we didn't do anything in December. What we wanted to do is do something that we think honors this memory, that was sustaining, not doing something that's just one time. So during the month of January, and as you can see, it's proven to be quite cold, so we're going to make sure that we have several stops and opportunities. That was near and dear to Ed's heart. Earl knew Ed very well. So we want to make sure that we do something that honors him well, but something that's actually beneficial to the residents of Ward 7. So thank you very much, Carolyn, for reminding me of that. And then while I'm at it, I know we will have a couple of speakers. I'm shifting back to Penn Branch. Roy just mentioned speakers, so we're lining up our speakers. We have them lined up for the next 3 months. So next month we'll have the Chief of Police Newsham here. The following month we'll have the new DDOT director here, and then we're actually working a month ahead. So we'll probably have another surprise guest after that. I know we spoke with Melinda Bowling, but we're also focusing on more political. So we'll be doing that soon. And the only other thing I can say, this is a January meeting. While I was looking at my phone going back to our January meetings, I don't know why, Ed, I kind of apologize to you for a light crowd. Normally we have a heavy crowd, but I look back, January meetings, I think people are still trying to get over Christmas, and they don't come out too quickly. So we will be showing this, and Ed, again, I thank you very much for coming out.
Great presentation.
A couple other minor announcements, not minor. One of it, you asked about Penn Branch, so I'll give a brief update of that. But we have Dexter Williams in the room. Dexter wears a couple of hats. So Dexter has been very active. Ed mentioned the DC Fair Elections bill, so I don't know if you want to say something. He worked hard enough at it.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And he's also the policy advisor when you want to shoot me later.
So as Ed Lazaris, well, first I want to introduce myself. I'm Dexter Williams. I'm the chair of the Ward 7 Fair Elections Coalition. As Ed Lazaris was saying, the Fair Elections Act passed today. So if you can...
It passed unanimously.
It passed unanimously. Councilmember Gray, when it was in the... can you all hear me? Yeah. So anyway, when it was in the Judiciary Committee, he was the critical council member that got it out of committee. There were several council members on Judiciary who were not going to vote for it, and we thought that the bill would not pass, and then Gray magically got on board, and then other council members started to follow suit, and so for the past year, we've been organizing like crazy, trying to get Ward 7 folks involved in the process. The late Ed Patillo was heavily involved in that, and so a lot of prominent leaders in Ward 7, including Jimmy Williams and Earl Williams,
and Dexter Williams.
Well, my family.
We actually are related. But I'm disowning Jimmy for the next couple of months, putting me on the spot. But if you guys have been receiving our emails, I'm the guy that's been sending you the fair elections emails. I don't know if you have gotten them, but thank you all for your support. Jimmy, thank you for your support. I know that was not politically easy to come out in favor of fair elections when we first started talking to you about 6 months ago. So thank you. If you guys have any questions, happy to answer them.
So Dexter, my brother, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So just a couple wrap-ups. I know a lot of you all have been asking about Penn Branch Shopping Center. We do promise we're going to have a full update coming next month. There's a lot still going on with it. As you know, the first phase has already started. The Planet Fitness, the construction and demolition has already started on the back side of the building. So that is happening with Planet Fitness coming to there. There's going to be remodeling on the complete back side over for the next several months there. So that building, their intent basically is to do a slow demolish, not a full demolish, but a complete rebuild of that building. As you know, it was fraught full of errors. The escalator didn't work, nothing worked. So with Planet Fitness going up there, one of the things they had to do was do a complete securing of that building before they could start construction of Planet Fitness, which, as you know, is a major chain. And so they've pumped a lot of money into it, and that's going to be really the first major retailer other than CVS and Subway and T-Mobile, but this is a larger scale that's coming in here. It might not be the Vita that some people wanted, but it's a lot better than what we had back there now. So what I am saying that we are doing is discussions that we had is how can we continue to support the project. Now, the issues that we don't know that are still pending is really what happens with the second phase, which is the construction of a building, which includes a street, and that has involvement with the Department of Transportation. That's a lot of moving pieces. We do have residents on one street, on O Street, who raise several objections, and I have to say some of the objections were right on target, some of them are questions that need to be answered, but the idea is that that's not my job to answer, that's the developer. Come in and answer the questions and respond, and then we can start moving forward, and the discussions that they're willing to do that. The issue that seems to be the sticking point has really been blocking the view. People at O Street have several questions from that to the streets. Some of them have already been answered, and all likelihood, most of this will end up going right back to the zoning committee. Now that zoning, it's important to know that it was held up because of those objections. The downside of that means the announcements that were supposed to happen, that we wanted to see, don't happen. But then again, it gives a breathing space to make sure that people who have legitimate questions, that they get an answer to that. So what I'm pushing for now is that we really want to make sure that in an open environment that we get the answers to the questions, that we get consensus. Everybody is not going to be happy 100%. That just doesn't work that way in this neighborhood. And what we do know is that a year from now, 2 years from now, we don't want this shopping center to be where it is. We don't want to hinder the development, but we want reasonable development. So that goes along with a lot of the questions that people have been asking. I know a lot of us have been really active with that. We have the Penn Avenue Economic Development Committee, which launched their website recently. The whole idea behind that is really to foster development of business along Pennsylvania Avenue, southeast, east of the river. So Ed, you'll be getting some love from them. And I encourage you all, the link has been up on the website. I'll repost that link. We've also taped a video using a lot of people from this community, and they're including Reverend Curry's on that video. And we're talking about what we want, where we are, and what we want in the development we want in this community, and how we want to get there. So all in all, I encourage you all to ask any questions. So I don't want to drag this meeting off. It's 8:35. I did say 8:45. I want to leave enough time to see if there's new issues. Thank you all for coming out. So are there issues or anything else on the table for myself and Roy or the executive board or things that you like? And sorry, let's just do a stop before we do that. Nomination committee. So I have been on the executive board of Penn Branch Citizen Civic Association for about 6.5 years. That
And you're
term
doing
is-
a good job.
Well, that term in June will come to an end. I'm dropping the mic. Yeah, definitely dropping the mic. So, I mean, it's been great, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm chair of Ward 7 Democrats now. That takes a lot of my time. I run a nonprofit, as you know, the Washington Literacy Center. That takes a lot of my time. There's only so much that I can do, so I'm actually pleased with what I've done. Nomination committee. I've talked to Mr. Elson Nash, will head the nomination committee. We are looking for people. You cannot be on the executive board and be a part of the nomination committee. We're looking for people who are impartial, who can start working on that. I'm giving enough notice to let you know that June is coming. I don't want people to go and say, hey, Jimmy, can you do one more time? The current bylaws say no, I say no. And I think if you ask Roy, he'll say no, we're done. Now, some of the other people, like Jacqueline, they're kind of new, throw her under the bus. Excuse me? So anyway, quite in all seriousness, Elson, thank you very much for agreeing to chair the nomination committee. So that will be the job. So what we want is volunteers. You'll see this in the newsletter. We're going to look for volunteers. And again, the criteria is we really want people who are not involved. We want people who can lead this process. And I'm process oriented. I know Elson is process oriented. We want to make sure that this is clean and that we encourage people who will know that this is a commitment. And God knows it's a thankless job. I get emails asking me, why didn't you answer me 5 minutes ago? And I have to say, well, I got a kid, I got a house, I got a job, I got a whole lot of things going on. People don't care. But at the same time, when I see the traction in this community and what's happening, I put my heart in it. Our executive board, we put our hearts in it. We do what we can, and it's a work around the clock. What we want to make sure is that we have people that do the same thing, that continue the torch. Normally, this room is full. We work to make sure this room is full. So that's all I'm asking, is that we want to make sure we encourage people. We want to get younger people in there, but we really want that involvement. So again, you'll see that. Elson, thank you very much for doing that. Anything else, Roy? So I think that's it. Like I said, with the Penn Branch Shopping Center, follow it up. When things open up, we're going to let you know. Lots of complaints about things happening on the streets around here. We do have a listserv. We have our own Google listserv, and the reason that was formed is that was to give real time of what's going on in this community about Penn Branch, for Penn Branch, and it's represented by the association. So if you're not on that Google listserv, let us know, we'll add you. It's easy to get on that listserv. You get real-time information when there's a zoning change, it goes out. Water breakage, it goes out. But it's also a two-way dialogue that you can respond back on that listserv. So there's a couple of Penn Branch listservs, but this one is Penn Branch DC. It's a Google group, and it's run by this association. So with that, any other questions, statements, anything else, new business? We will send out, we're going to send out our guests. I'm proud that we're sending out our speaker list early. So you'll get the speaker for the next 3 months. And like I said, we'll work on elevating this. We're going to go out with a bang, a big bang. And so I promise that. So with that, I adjourn. Ed, thank you very much.
Thank you.
New camera person, actually, thank you very much. I'll be adjourned.